So I want to speak to some couples out there because I get this a lot. I'm actually working with a couple right now, coaching them through some challenging scenarios. And I think it's important because when you're an individual doing your own kind of inside game work, it's one thing. When you're focused on deciding what works for you and it's not in relation to a partner or anyone else, you pick and choose the things that ultimately resonate, speak to your heart, hopefully, and kind of approach it in a way that just seems to be right for you. And so there's nothing for anyone to witness, to see, or experience. It's your inside game. With couples, it's sometimes a little bit different when I'm working with them and they're both agreeable to uh, upping the ante on their inside game, really putting more energy and more focus and enthusiasm into it. But they don't necessarily ascend. They don't necessarily rise in the same way. And they don't necessarily see the same things that their partner sees. So it's very important that that two people really create a scenario where they allow themselves and each other the chance to focus their energy in the way that they see fit, and to not create a scenario where there's a level of judgment that exists around how my partner's doing it. So if someone says, I really want to focus on my meditation, I'm only doing 15 minutes a day. And the partner's going, well, I'm doing an hour and a half. You really need to be doing more. And so we get into this who's right and who's wrong scenario. And the truth of the matter is, nobody is right and nobody is wrong in this dynamic. The way we ascend is an individual process. It's not necessarily always, especially as a couple, exacting itself in the same way, playing itself out in the same way, the same fashion. It's often very different. And so sometimes through how couples approach the inside game is very revealing as to the challenges that they're experiencing in their relationship, where one is is thinking they're doing more than the other. One is judging that you're not doing enough. I mean, there's always that interesting dynamic that suddenly plays out in the inside game. And I say, listen, you need to back away. You need to decide what resonates and speaks most closely to your heart, not necessarily your partner's heart, and what you think they should be doing. Because once you move into judgment, now we're exacting everything that is the antithesis and the opposite of what the inside game is ultimately designed to do. Now, if you're judging and you're willing to look at that and see that that's part of the challenge externally in your world playing out in your relationship, and you're willing to back off of it now that you see it mirrored back to you with respect to your inside game, then okay, then now we've got some place to work with that in this process. So the dynamic really has to be, how do each of you want to approach this? And what do you agree upon as a way to do it? What are your respective placeholders in the day? So when I say a placeholder, if I'm talking about, well, I'm going to do my meditation at such and such time, I also have to make sure that that makes sense as far as my wife is concerned, because she may have something else that's planned. Or my check-ins during the day may involve, or it's like anything else, it's a schedule. It's like putting stuff in your schedule. So in order to do that, and you're in a partnership, then you want to check in and make sure that you're creating the space and allowing the space for each of you to do what ultimately is necessary and that you're called to do. So there is no right or wrong in this game. The idea is the willingness to consistently commit to doing something. That's how this plays out. That's how this shows up in a way that allows people the dignity and the grace to approach it from their own place and their own perspective in a way that makes the most sense to them. Now, sometimes people approach this from a different place, where maybe one has been already working in that arena and doing a lot of work and the other one hasn't. So it's not a race. It's not who's doing more. It's not who's doing better at it. It's not you have to catch up to me. It's simply the awareness that you know that your partner is committed to it. not your commitment, their commitment to it, not what necessarily you want. And that's where boundaries come in. Sometimes partners will spell out, say, listen, I have a firm boundary around that in order for us to stay together, in order for us to work through our stuff, that this is what it has to look like in order for us to ascend to the same level and to get the same frequency and all that stuff. And it's like the other partner's sitting there going, well, I want us to stay together, but I don't know that if I can meet that. Well, that's a firm boundary for me. Well, then you've got to decide, is it really a firm boundary? Is your ultimate goal and necessity about simply ascending for yourself and requiring that your partner ascends at the same time as you or the same place as you, which is unrealistic? Or are you willing to make that boundary less than firm and more pliable and say, listen, as long as I can really see and experience and touch and taste and feel and smell and realize it for myself within that and our conversations that we're both working towards the same thing or something similar, then fantastic. Then I'm willing to be a part of that. Then I'm willing to engage in that. And it's really an interesting dynamic when I watch how couples approach, as I said earlier, how they approach the inside game, because a lot of times their external issues and their relationship challenges play themselves out in how they approach their inside game. And I was talking to them earlier today, and I just, to one of them actually, and I said, listen, you have to decide what works for you. You have to decide what makes the most sense for you. You can't think of this as a game of catch up where you have to catch up to where your partner is and get to that same place at the same time. It's not realistic. It's what works for you. What is it that you're ready to commit to? What feels good to you? What speaks to your heart in this area, in this arena? And then developing from there a set of tools that you can put into place throughout the day that really makes the most sense for you, that works for you. A lot of times, and I see this often, is partners will say, yeah, we really need to work on our inside game. And I go, okay, what's the work? Yeah, well, we're working on it. What are you doing? Well, and the truth is, they're not doing anything. They're just having a conversation about it. They're engaging in a conversation about, yeah, we really need, it's like saying, yeah, I really need to get to the store. I just haven't gotten there yet. Yeah, I really need to get to the mailbox. Just haven't gotten there yet. Yeah, I really need to get to the inside game. Just haven't gotten there yet. And that's fine. But the truth be told is that your inside game is interwoven with your external game. And in order to create sustainable lifetime results, SLR, as I like to say, you must have the commitment to understand that those two elements are working together all day long. And it has to move from this conversation. Yeah, we're talking about it. We're engaging about it. It's like, no, you got to take action. You got to take action because it's the very thing that you're talking about that you're not doing anything about is what brought you to me in the first place. Yeah, we really need to communicate more. But then they don't. Yeah, we really need to show our loving more. And they're not. Well, that's why you're here. So the sentences that come out of people's mouths, the words that they use, reveal the patterns that exist and what prevents ultimately people from developing an inside game and then also working together and supporting each other in that process. Because we're not always in the same place. When I was in my master's program, there were, you could really see it was sometimes glaring where a married person would come in for the weekend without their spouse because their spouse wasn't interested or had other plans or had their own business or had to watch the kid, whatever it was. And then they would, the one person would learn all this stuff, would get in touch with their heart, would really learn these different schools, these different skills and tools and all this stuff. And then they go home and like kind of push it on their partner, and their partner's like, whoa, like what's going on here? I remember one time there was a husband came to pick up his wife, and at the end of the weekend, it's very like loving energy, right? So at the end, of the weekend, the husband's like walks in, he's got this like scowl on his face, and everybody's smiling and hugging each other and laughing and whatever. And he called everybody like the huggers and the smilers, like we found out later. Like it would look like it looked like we were part of a cult. But he just wasn't there. Like he just wasn't there. The fact of the matter is that it revealed within their marriage that he wasn't interested in any of this. And that creates a disruption in the frequency that one person is trying to achieve versus another. And if you don't have a matching frequency, you're going to have challenges. And so we'd see sometimes the next year, um, we'd find out that the spouse enrolled in the first year of the 2-year program. And that was always kind of cool to know. And then we would hear when people would come back, yeah, we divorced over the summer, we separated over the summer, because it just revealed the gap in that. And, my master's program was very much about the inside game and a focus and emphasis on the internal work that's necessary to ascend and achieve a higher level of consciousness. Well, if two people don't agree that they want to achieve a higher level of consciousness, that kind of is a deal breaker for the vast majority of people. If you don't want the same thing, that's a challenge. If somebody wants to have kids, the other one doesn't want to have kids, that's a deal breaker. That's not a negotiated state. But the key is that when people are willing to join their partner, when people are willing to participate in the process and not judge themselves or judge their partner, where they're at, where they're not yet, where they should be here by now, and just say, listen, this is an individualized, stylized approach. I'm going to meditate 15 minutes. My spouse is going to meditate an hour. I'm going to do this breath work. They're not interested in the breath work right now. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. I'm not better than them. I'm not worse than them. It's just different. And so we all have our own really divine timing in all of this. And it's not a conversation, quite frankly, when you're single or alone. It's just you, basically, and you don't have to answer to anybody about what you're doing and how you're doing it, and you commit to what you commit to, and it's not a conversation. It's not a question. It is when people come to me as individuals, as single people, and say, hey, I don't know if I'm doing enough here. I don't know what maybe I need to be doing more. Maybe I need to be doing something different. Can we go over this? And that's, how I help people kind of figure that stuff out. But that's just them kind of measuring against themselves and what they ultimately want to achieve, and kind of checking in to see if they're on a path and on a course that really makes the most sense. Couples, it's a whole different dynamic. It's a whole different dynamic. But it's a cool dynamic, because I love to watch and I love to see how couples learn and grow together and understand that they're not necessarily always going to be on the same page and at the same point. And here's the bottom line. It's not a fucking race. It's not a race. This is not, none of us, I promise you, none of us, I don't care who it is, who you project onto, who you see in social media, who you see on a stage. I don't care. Name the person. I'm going to tell you they're not mastered. They're here to do their work in this lifetime, in their human suit. They're here to do their work. They're not mastered. They have stuff like you have stuff, like I have stuff. I found myself even the other day going through what I've been going through on a physical level, dealing with a bunch of things, having to take some medication to alleviate pain and all the different things. I started feeling like, God, I don't understand why this is happening to me. I meditate, I do all this stuff. Like I was starting to think like, whoa, did I somehow arrive? Did I somehow become mastered? No. I'm wearing the human suit like everybody else. I've got my stuff. I'm just, as my coach said, I'm just on the next step, in that part of Ascension. I've hit the next step. And my work is to be able to be responsible to it. My commitment is to be open and honest with what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling as I move through it, as I work with it, as I bless everything that I need to take to get me to a place of some kind of an equilibrium, some kind of a balanced state where I can at least see things more clearly and I can make clearer choices in that sense. So none of us are mastered. So this isn't this isn't a competition. There's no like. I used to always make a joke. There's no meditation team, right? Like you don't. There's no team. Like you can't try out. There's no league. It's not a competition. It's not, you can't turn pro. Like the most astute meditators often find themselves pulling themselves back in, reeling themselves back in, sometimes for hours when they have the time to do that, to pull themselves back into the present moment because they're constantly drifting. I sometimes have wonderful meditations. And other times I'm realize I'm wandering. My brain is wandering off, and I pull myself back in. And before I realize I've wandered off again, and then I pull myself back in, and then I've wandered off again. It's not a competition. It's the commitment and the willingness to approach the work and take yourself on your inside game to your next level, to that next place that makes the most sense for you, that resonates most strongly for you, that takes you to someplace better. What I'm experiencing right now, what I'm working with in my body around my wellness challenges, is part of my work, directly part of my work. It's not a gap in my work. It's not a failure of my existing work, my previous work. It's not I was making errors and making mistakes. It's just the next level. And the pursuit is mastery. The pursuit is always mastery. It's the idea is to understand that it's never achieved, that you're never mastered. None of us are. But the beauty is that when you can see that within yourself, and you stop judging yourself for it, and especially if you're in a relationship, and then you can stop judging your partner for where they're at. They don't have to catch up to you. They'll find you if you're open to it. They'll meet you someplace in that middle ground somewhere, and it may be different, but you know what? You know that the commitment is there, and you know that better is the pursuit, and it's being pursued. And when you start to understand that and you start to see that, then all of a sudden you realize, oh, wait, we can work through this together. We can achieve a level of frequency that makes the most sense to us. And if we can't, it's not a crime. If along the way couples decide they can't match the frequency of their partner, that their partner is just pursuing down a path that just doesn't resonate for them. I love them, I care about them, I know they love me and they care about me, but that's just not where I want to go. That's not a crime, folks. That's just a realization that the frequency is not a match and that you can love and support each other in a different way moving forward. So know that it's not a game. Know that it's not a competition. Know that you're going to achieve different levels, different heights of your own consciousness at different times in your own divine timing. And it's not a race. Just make the commitment to show up, to pursue it, to be a part of it, and always know, and I'm in it right now, there's always a deeper cut. We'll see you again next time.